I always thought something was wrong with me. Going back to 4 years old in preschool, we were playing Duck, Duck, Goose, and I would get so anxious that someone was going to pick me, where all the other kids couldn't wait to be tagged. I didn't want all that pressure or attention on me, and even as a toddler, I knew that that wasn't normal. Flash forward 2 years, at 6 years old, I got kicked out of Sunday school for asking too many questions about God and proof of his existence. My deep questions were labeled as disruptive to the curriculum. And again, I knew something about me wasn't like the others. My entire life, I've had countless people mention how I see things differently, that I'm too sensitive, that I need to let things go. So I learned it was safer for me to isolate when the world's energy felt too overwhelming. But this only left me feeling more alone and like nobody understood me. And then one day, about 6.5 years ago, a new friend of mine who just got her Reiki Master certification mentioned in a conversation with me that she's both an empath and an HSP. And I'd never heard of these terms before, despite my 1,000 years of therapy and all the multiple healing modalities I've done. And in this simple conversation, I felt completely seen and validated for all these things that I felt made me so weird and different from the rest of the world. You know, this world's tough enough as it is, but as an empath and a highly sensitive person, it can feel like too much to handle. And the key is to work with these beautiful traits of yours and to manage them with love. And today's episode will open your eyes to a new way of navigating that big, beautiful, compassionate heart of yours. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash-making advice. Now let's get to it. And so you can't say I didn't warn you. This is it. The final highly coveted new member spots inside my famous ProjectME Posse business coaching membership will be sold out in the next 48 hours. This is your chance to change your life and create lifestyle changing cash, making money, doing something that feels fulfilling, fun, and easy to you. Picture this, a network of like-minded individuals, all driven by the same passion and ambition to stop settling for average and start taking actions and going for the life that gives you limitless options and freedom to do what the hell you want without depending on any person, place, thing, or institution for money again. As a member, you'll gain access to unparalleled benefits and privileges, from exclusive live trainings to time-saving resources and direct access to me and all the industry experts I bring in to guide you. So you're either setting yourself up for massive success or setting yourself up to continue settling for the same old thing that isn't working for you anymore. So this is your final chance to get in here. Go to projectmewithtiffany.com/Project Me Posse. You can swipe up. It's also inside the show notes and in my link in bio on Instagram and TikTok. And if it says on there, sold out, that means there's no membership spots available right now, and you'll have to keep checking back. Come in here. It's month to month, or you can do a year-long option and save money. You'll see why it's the most famous business coaching membership in the world by coming in. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? It's your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is the show that is going to help you grow your business, that big, beautiful brain of yours, your bank account, your relationships, and everything in between. I got inundated with emails, with private messages ever since I went viral. Was it like a little over a week ago on TikTok? And I noticed a common theme from people when it comes to having like resistance around career, around money, around having success, around having what would make them feel like they had an abundant, vibrant life. And I was able to notice it because of that expression, like, if you spot it, you got it. And you guys may have heard me say that I'm a self-identified empath, highly sensitive person. I'm also an abuse survivor. I mean, I have a very long litany of things. And what I noticed in these people's questions, people were sending their stories, which I love reading your stories. I was in tears by reading some of these elaborate stories that people were sending and trusting me to hold space and read them. And what it came down to is like believing they have to be something other than who they are in order to have what they want, whether that is an amazing partner, whether that is more friends, whether that is like a job they actually love or make more money in their business, and that they're deficient in an area. So why I wanted to bring on Holly Groupé, who is a licensed therapist and specializes in working with this personality type in particular, is let's unpack this. I want those of you who aren't sure, am I an empath? What is that? Because I didn't know what the hell that was. What's a highly sensitive person? What qualifies? What does this look like? But also how to start being able to really navigate this world knowing you're that type of person. Because you do experience the world differently when you're in that way. And things can seem a lot harder. They can seem more intense. Things can seem like it's a lot. You can end up feeling like you're different from everyone else, which only makes you feel like less likely to be able to have the things you want because you know you're kind of not normal. And I'm like, you know what? I did not go to 500 years of school to be qualified to talk about this. So I brought you on, Holly.
Yay! Thank you. There's a lot there.
Yeah, there is a lot there. And first, take us into like what qualifies someone as being an empath or having empath personality traits.
Yeah. So empathic folks, I say like they speak like the language of the world. They feel with their heart. So it's like there's not words for it, right? We come into the world feeling on this energetic wavelength. And it's not something everybody else has. And so it can feel really weird. And it can have folks being very sensitive to a lot of sound, sensitive to big emotions, sensitive to lights and noises. And so then they're getting this message. They're picking up on this frequency as a tiny person. And then they're getting this message that something's wrong with them. They're too sensitive. It's too much. They should just be able to get it together. That shouldn't be overwhelming to you. It shouldn't be upsetting. And so then they're like, oh, that's wrong. Right. And so they start to kind of hide this and not really see that this is actually an incredible gift to really tap into some of the deepest, most like true things about life and about emotions and connections and humanity. And so that's really my goal, is to help folks who feel this deeply to know that this is not a deficit. This is actually a superpower.
Do you typically notice that when someone is an empath, that they're also an introvert, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think that sometimes folks can get overstimulated, but if they oftentimes have kind of found that they do better on one-on-one relationships, so they can tolerate those. And so they might consider themselves more extroverted if they have several close friends that they can be really big with. But then I think some folks are just, they need more time to download, right? So that like, you might be more introverted, but you might just need more time to actually process through things, because it's like, if someone else is just getting like a sentence from an experience, you're getting like a book.
Oh my God. What a great way to describe it. It's like, this lady they call it the Strand here, which is like basically like the boardwalk. And most people stop me when I walk Chubbs because he's like the mayor and he's very cute. And I like really didn't want to chat. Like I went out there to take a break for myself from like my coaching calls and meetings and such. But she like, whatever, wanted to talk. And within a 2-minute engagement with her, I literally felt like her childhood wounding. You know what I mean? Like I felt her deep anguish and loneliness and her craving for connection on such a desperate level. And I, all at once, it was like like you said, the book, but like all at one time, like a whoosh. And I had to really like, okay, like we're separating, we're detaching from that. That doesn't mean I don't care, but that's a lot. I can't take that on. And yeah, I do. I see what you're saying. I think that's why so many empaths, we need to like hibernate and we need this downtime. It can feel sometimes safer that way because going out in the world, it just can feel like too much.
Absolutely. And I love what you said and really that visual of a boundary of literally, this is not mine. When I first started working as a therapist, like I would feel it in my body. Like I would feel my clients and I still get those hits, but it's definitely not as intense because my gut kind of knows how to download them a little bit quicker. But it's like, yeah, I see this and I can totally appreciate that this is an experience, but it's not mine. And that I think is like the lesson for empaths that I was thinking about this the other day. Like, why is it so hard for them to get back inside themselves? And it's because they're walking in other people's shoes so much of the time, right? They have such empathy, such compassion. So they're not even walking inside their own life. And it's like, yeah, of course, this identity is not going to feel like you can get the things that you want because you're not even inside your life. You're in somebody else's shoes.
Do you notice a lot of empaths complain of being like exhausted all the time or fatigued or drained?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I hear this all the time and really have to get clear of like, just because you see a responsibility or you see a need doesn't mean it's yours to pick up.
Oof. That is tough though, when it's like a friend or your partner or a coworker. It's like, how do you discern, is this mine to lean into, or is this something I should disconnect from?
Yeah. So if you have the space, and that's where it's like that's where I have to know where my levels are at. So I have to be doing my internal inventory of like, how much do I have to give on a regular basis so that I know if an opportunity comes up or someone reaches out for support, I know where my levels are at, where my tank is. So even if I really, really love this person and I want to give them everything in the world, if I am depleted, there is nothing to give. So that's something I kind of say it's like a hard stop. It's like, it's not good or bad. It's the truth of I don't have that to give. So once you've established, if you have the energy, I think the next thing is looking at what's the intention. Am I trying to save them from themselves? Am I trying to save them from life? And I have to humble myself to say it's not my life to live. And I don't know. I don't know if this life lesson is going to be something that's going to promote growth for them, an opportunity for them to actualize and become a better version of themselves. And who am I to step in and say, I need to live your life for you. And I need to, any problems you have, I need to take them on and get that pain from you.
So just because we feel it and we sense it and we know it, that doesn't automatically mean it's our responsibility that we have to do something about it.
Exactly.
It can feel like at the moment, because I feel it so intensely, like with this lady. And it feels in the moment, well, I must be picking up on this for a reason. And if I'm a good person and a caring human and have a beautiful heart, maybe I would give her an extra 10 minutes of time so she feels the love and companionship I can tell she is deeply desiring.
And I think that that's where that judgment piece comes in. If I was a good person, right? But look at all these other things that you do with your life to make the world a more beautiful place. Like, so you would be taking from those things. You would be taking the things you've intentionally built in your life and giving to things that you've unintentionally just encountered, right? So this is where we get off track because we're just like, we're letting our energy just get sucked wherever. There's always going to be people who have needs and feelings that need to be held. And what a lot of times what we're picking up on, and with this person, it sounds like we were picking up all her helplessness. And that was like, oh, I got to save this person because they're so helpless. And and that I have dealt personally with a lot in my profession, especially, at the beginning of my career of like, I just want to save them. And it's like really relaxing into trusting this is not my life and it is their journey. Right. And so maybe that one interaction, maybe that you gave her 2 minutes and that she got to see a cute dog brightened her day. There's always going to be more, but if what we do isn't enough, then there's not going to be enough.
Yeah. Cause if I had played that out and I didn't have this boundary and honor the fact, like I had nothing else to give. That's also why I was going on a walk, right? Was to replenish. But my mind really wanted to start messing with me and saying, well, Tiffany, maybe you ran across her at this exact time and for a reason. And maybe it was you were supposed to do something with this. And it can really go deep in there. And then it can, for me, because my default emotion from childhood is shame, I can use it to like even shame myself. Mm-hmm. And then that causes exhaustion. I don't feel I'm alone in this when it comes to the cycle of like stuff that empaths go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's where it comes back to being just so honest and tender with ourselves. Of like, that wasn't available. That just wasn't available to me in that moment. And to me, what that does is it takes the charge out of it. It's not shaming. It's just, there's no, like, I want to bring everything to neutral. So those boundaries aren't like, they're not like you're aggressively walking around with these big boundaries. It's just like, nope, this is not available to me. It's just very like, no energy has to be put into it because it's just a fact. And if you were by your house, maybe you'll see that woman again and it'll be an available time in that time. And you're already beholding that knowingness. Oh, this is the time.
I love that because if I was supposed to give a little more, then I probably would have had the bandwidth for it. Mm-hmm. I would have delighted in it. It wouldn't have felt like a favor, an obligation, or even a chore.
Yes. And that is right. Like that's where the superpowerness of empaths come is like, you have this power to make people feel this way when it's available to you.
Otherwise, the price we pay for giving what we don't have, or at least not learning intentionally how to do this, setting the boundaries energetically, verbally, physically, all the things, we end up in a very low spot. So what are some, I guess we call them like symptoms or signs that someone is an empath, but has not been setting boundaries, has been way over giving? What does that end up looking like?
I think when folks are, they know they're sensitive, they're usually like people that kind of take on like this mom role or therapist role in their friend group. They're just like always that they're like everybody's best friend kind of, or like people just have this really special feeling towards them. And so that feels really good.
It does. It makes me feel needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, so we do more of that. And we've learned that from childhood. Like, oh, when I talk about these things that I'm feeling and I give it back to this person and I speak kind of from this heart language, they really like that. Oh, I'm going to do more of that. And that gets me connected. That gets me attention. That makes me feel good. And then now I'm getting a little bit older and people are like, well, what do you like? And what's going on with you? And then you're like, I don't know. What's going on with you?
That's so true.
So then people, by the time they get to therapy, they're like, I'm burnt out. I don't know myself. I'm exhausted. I'm guilty all the time. I feel like I'm always letting somebody down. If I do something for myself, it's selfish. If I don't do something for myself, then I'm doing a bad job of taking care of myself, and just really feeling like you're backed into a corner, I think is what I see people coming in like this, where empaths are just totally burnt out. They're totally out of their power. And they're just giving it away. They don't even, it's like a leaky faucet. Like, it's costing you all this money and you don't even know where it's going.
Yeah. And then there's nothing left for yourself. And the area that I notice so many empaths, whether they're self-identified or not, get lost in. And I was in this spot, which I was like, why doesn't someone do for me what I do for them? Like, why don't I have, like, where are my like 5 empath people, where they pour in, where they understand? Like, I got a resentment of how empathetic and understanding and compassionate and being able to anticipate needs and read needs and energies. I was like, why doesn't anyone do that for me?
Yeah. And I think because they're not as capable, right? Like, they have a different way of giving love and sharing their gifts, and they don't speak that deep emotional language. And so I think when we get inside of ourselves, we do start to call other people that are also inside of themselves. And they're like, oh, hey, I'm glad you made it here. And so I think as I have established more boundaries and really centered myself in my life, I have found such deep, supportive relationships that I didn't necessarily have before, or were a lot more far and few between. But I'm super clear about what I have to give and what I don't have to give. And I'm very understanding about what people have to give and what they don't have to give, because I've worked on those boundaries. Whereas a lot of people, they don't know how much it's costing you, right? They don't know that you're getting these book downloads instead of a sentence that they're getting. They don't realize that. And that's why if we don't tell them, hey, when you ask for this, it's costing me this, they're not going to know. And then we build up those resentments. And I always kind of say, if you don't deal with guilt on the front end, then resentment's on the back end. And that's much harder to deal with. And then you're not available to those relationships. And that's a bummer. Like, so for me, I keep those boundaries because even if that person's not available for a relationship right now, I don't want to resent them in the future in case they are.
I love that. How do people set these boundaries and then be able to release themselves of the guilt? Or is that just come in practice over time?
I think it's practice for sure. And I think it's a deeper work of getting so clear on who you are doing this for. Right. And that, especially like that inner child in you, these gifts were not fostered and oftentimes, taken advantage of through different traumas or abuse. And that when you override your knowingness that there's a limit, you're doing that same thing to that little child. You're abandoning them and saying they're not important. And like, I just refuse to do that anymore. And I don't want for my clients to do that anymore. So it's not just about me supporting them. It's about them truly loving this child and knowing everything that child has been through. How dare you put them in a situation where they're going to be treated like that again? Like, do not do that to them. That is not fair.
I 100% feel you on that. I'm like fiercely protective now of my boundaries, energetically, financially, physically, emotionally. And that doesn't mean that that's always received well by people. I just had someone before you for an application call, and this person did not like that I did not feel they were a good fit to work with me. for a particular program. And I didn't say it meanly. They just weren't a good fit. And they didn't like that. And that's also not my problem. And I'm not carrying that with me, but I would love for you to speak to that, because I think that is what prevents so many people from setting a boundary, because you're changing the script. Like, to a stranger, it can be maybe okay. But like, if you're changing the script and you've always been like the go-to person, you always pick up the phone for this person, people can always count on you. Oh, go to Holly for help. She'll do it for you. And if you change the script and set a boundary, there is a fear for a lot of people of abandonment. I'm not going to be invited anywhere. People are going to think I'm a bitch. They're going to think I'm heartless, that I'm mean, that I only care about money, so on and so on.
Yeah, I think that is a real barrier, and it might happen. And I think it's similar to like those phases of life, like when, your friends get married or they start having their kids, and the friendship's different. And yeah, these relationships might change as they're getting reorganized. And that might not be okay for some of the people in your life. They might say, I don't want you unless you show up like this. And that's really painful. And there's a lot of grief that comes with healing. And I think that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot, is there's a lot of sadness of really seeing that, and recognizing that, our biggest job is like to get on our truest, highest path that's different than anybody else's. And if we're getting on that by tending to ourselves and other people are pushing back, they might not be on our path anymore. That might be the end of our journey, no matter how close they are. And, I've had to set boundaries with very close family members because they weren't available to support me in supporting myself. And that was incredibly hard and 100% necessary for me to have the relationships with myself and with the people I have now. So really, to me, this is like a little woo-woo, but it's like trusting the universe of like, I will be held. I will be held by friends no matter what. Doesn't mean it's the same friend, but there will always be someone to hold me. And I trust that through and through.
I trust that without a doubt. Now I have enough evidence of it, but wow, did that require a lot of faith when I first had to start going through, and everyone had to go in my life except one person. But people did not like the Tiffany who had boundaries. That did not work for them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was excruciating, but my choice was continue to hold on to relationships that aren't serving my greatest good. In fact, slowly killing me and being miserable, or go through that temporary grief and pain of releasing them so I can call in different people mm-hmm. who are supportive, and people where it's more of a two-way friendship or relationship.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It does take faith, and leaving what we know is hard. And that is why healing is very challenging, because it's easy to stay in the known. Like, I know this negative self-talk. I know this loop. I know this jumping in and saving the day and taking care of everyone. That's my MO. And that's just what I've been doing, and recognizing like, oh, actually I'm exhausted doing that. It's not fulfilling me and I don't really like it. I don't feel appreciated and I'm feeling run down. So what am I doing this for? I'm doing it to avoid feeling a little uncomfortable for a not that long of a time, and that's really where I come back to that, like parenting our inner child, of like negotiating with them a little bit of like, this is going to be hard, because the kid is the one crying out, don't leave me, right? Like, don't be mad at me. Like, don't think I'm bad. And so you, as that internal parent, have to say, I know it's so sad and it's so scary, but I'm here with you, and I'm never going to leave you.
Yeah, that whole empath thing, does it come from, are you born as an empath, or does this come from being in some sort of dysfunctional family environment?
I think that we're born this way. And then I think that folks, and it's often not like tended to or taught. Like if you were born as like a gifted pianist, like your parents would put you in piano and you'd be doing that. But when you're born like this, it might not be a fostered skill. And then you add being raised by humans, and there's going to be misattunement at its best. And then the empath feels that so deeply. And at its worst, we're getting into traumatic abuse, right? And then you imagine someone that feels at such a deep level. And these children are pretty much kind of set up for abuse too, right? Because they're really people pleasing. They don't speak up. So they, I think, are more prone to, I don't know if that's true. I don't want to that's not a fact, but I do think that it can be likely that they will carry the trauma in their body more. And so they're going to feel it more. And that's that like frequency that you're picking up on is like on drugs. It's like all cracked out. It's so big because your system got short circuited and you were forced into this really intense way of being. And your biggest asset is being able to know how other people feel.
Yeah. And we get rewarded a lot in society for it, in our families for it, in the workplace for it. Like, isn't Carol so helpful? Oh, go to Dan. Dan fixes everything that goes wrong in someone's house. Go hit up Dan. And I used to be the person like, you want business advice, money advice, resume advice, career advice. Like, I mean, I'm talking, people would pass out my number. Oh, call Tiffany. She's amazing. She's on it. Like she's, da, 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 da. And I would not really want to necessarily help this random person someone gave my number to. But the old me actually didn't think I had a choice. I did not. I really did not think I had a choice. I thought, well, someone's asking for help and I have to give it. And if I don't give it, that would make me, like I said earlier, to make me a terrible person, an unloving person, a bad human. And I attach that belief to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's so important to recognize, like the dopamine hits that we get when people tell us like how good we are at something. And that does feel really good. And we like it and we want to do that. And when we can tease out our value from really anything else, but especially from being able to serve others, like our value is our value. We are valuable because the essence of our humanness makes us valuable. And as an empath, you have this really great gift of being able to connect in and share on this really deep level where you could just like tune in and you know what the person needs. And when that's available, it feels amazing. And when it's not, we can't give that. And that's again where I trust that the universe will provide. Like that's of like, thank you for thinking of me. And I trust that you will find your way.
It sounds like what you're saying is the work is knowing at core, I am valuable, I am worthy, I am lovable, regardless of what I do externally, regardless of how many people I help, regardless if I choose to do this person a favor or not, regardless if I need a month where I'm only focused on nurturing myself, like I'm just as worthy.
Exactly. And actually what you just said of like, I just kind of came out of a month hiatus of really, really resting because that was what I needed. And now I have all this energy and I'm so excited to do all the things. But if I had like I would do in the past, then like that's not acceptable. You have to push through. There's people that need you. There's people that have it worse off. There's people that are suffering, all of the things. And then I wouldn't have allowed myself to do that. And then I wouldn't be able to be available to do something like this. I wouldn't be available to reach out to the people that I do reach out to. I would be less of the whole person I want to be. And so my biggest goal is wherever I am, whoever I'm with, I would love to give that person my full and whole attention. And if I'm carrying everyone else in my mind at the same time, I'm not going to be able to do that. And if I'm carrying everybody else in my mind when I'm spending time with myself, I'm not going to be able to tend to those needs. So finding a sense of like, hey, if I can't be fully present, then I don't want to do it. And it's like, that's my boundary. For other people, there might be a different one where they have to protect their energy in a different way. But it's not a judgment, and it's not a good person or bad person, or we get in this, if it's binary, usually it's skewed, right? Because the world is so gray and so many different colors. So if it's that black or white, like you're a good person or a bad person, you're worthy or unworthy, like, you know that there's a part of your brain playing that is a really young, wounded part that thinks in this way.
That's like a red flag that this is coming from, a wounded inner child.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think it's interesting how empaths have so much empathy and can pick up on so much of the needs and pain and feelings and all this stuff of others, and feel this pull to help others. Yet they don't have that same inclination or drive to do that to themselves. Why the hell is that?
My first answer is, I think no one's ever really taught them. And they look around, and a lot of other people, I think, do naturally tune into their own needs and move from this self-interest place. And empaths don't. Like, not that long ago, and within the last 5 years, my biggest desire was to just say, I have no more needs. If I can have no more needs, then I can be the most giving, available person. But I wouldn't even be a person, because all people have needs.
Right.
So I wanted to unperson myself in order to be a therapist. And that it's not sustainable. It's not realistic. And I think that what's so hard about it, it's like you've had your radio tuned to this one dial, and now we're asking you to tune it on another one. And especially if you grew up with misattunement, grew up with trauma, you had to put that other one on mute, because that one really didn't matter. Like, if you're okay, I'm okay, right? And so now when we ask you to take care of yourself and you turn up that dial, you're like, I don't know what's there. And so that in itself, when we're confused, we move away from things. We like things to not be confusing. So in order to feel confident in setting these boundaries, we have to start to hang out with ourselves, really turn inside, not just let the thoughts run, but have an internal conversation of what are you worried about? Right? What is this part of you that is feeling so worthless? What is it really worried about? I'm worried I'm going to be all alone. Okay. Well, I'm never going to leave you. And where did you learn that? This happened. It's okay. That was really hard, right? And then we can offer ourselves that compassion. And I use that voice, but I really do talk to myself that way and talk to my clients that way when we're talking to this child, because they're listening.
Yeah. I have a voice too for little Tiffy.
Mm-hmm.
And we have these conversations, just using that example, with that lady, and my critical parent, as I call it, that's saying the nasty things. God, that you're so rude, Tiffany. You're so self-absorbed. You couldn't have spent 5 more minutes with this lady. It was really going in a matter of a second. But the good news is all that was going in a second, but I also was able to reverse it in 2 seconds. Right. And I asked her, I was like, why do you feel that you need to talk to her, and that the weight of the world is on you and it's your job to help this strange woman? And it was well, I don't know. I feel like she's all alone and no one's going to help her. And well, where does that come from? And then she was like, because no one came for me. That's how deep, you guys, this shit goes. Well, no one came for me. And I was like, well, I've come for you now. And just because no one came for you, that it's not our job to then have to be that pillar for every single person who crossed our paths. That's for God. That's for the divine. That's for the universe.
Right. It's so beautiful. I have chills. Like I have goosebumps.
Do you see how fast that went? I mean, granted, I've been working on this 8.5 years, but you can reverse it that fast.
Absolutely. It comes up for sure. Like I have parts of me, they say really mean things. Like my kind of go-to is like, nobody likes you. And actually they actively dislike you. And I've worked really a lot with this part. And I kind of remind it like, oh, you don't have to do that anymore. And it's like, oh, okay, let's go play. Like cause they get stuck in these strategies that kept us safe because it kept us small and kept us attached to our caregivers or kept us attached to our attachment figure. And that's an unthinkable bind with trauma, right? The person hurting me is also the person protecting me or the person that is hurt, whatever, is somehow they're in this bind and the child has to take on the wounding, right? It's my fault. Now it makes sense because I suck. I'm the worst. I'm worthless. And then as an adult, when we go back and those little ones inside of us, I love that she talks to you because that shows that she trusts you. And we do have to build trust in this system and show that we are willing to do the work and willing to show up for all parts of us. And even like if someone's listening, if they have a similar talk with themselves of being able to say, where are you? And maybe she's still in this house and it's like, do you want to leave? And do you want to come with me? Or do you want to go somewhere else and I can build you a place in my mind that you can go and play? Like there's our minds, our brain. Think of all the crazy, anxious thoughts you've ever had. We can do that the other way too. Like our brains are wildly creative and it is magical to see this happen because it is possible. I see it happen. I see my clients get to this place and it's so beautiful that they're like, I'm valuing me for maybe the first time. And it's like, yeah, isn't that liberating? Isn't that exciting?
I mean, it's why I'm even alive, you guys. Mm-hmm. That's why when I do think the reason why I'm getting so many messages and I attract so many empaths and trauma survivors is I know you don't want to feel this way anymore. I know you don't. And you don't know how to get out and how to stop it and how to be different to the point where you've probably had people say to you, you're too sensitive. Just let it go. Things bother you too much. Oh my God, you worry way too much about what people think. None of that's fucking helpful.
No. So one thing that I would encourage everybody to remember is like, if any emotion is coming up, any thought of like, you have every right to feel that way. That doesn't make it true. And that's not what we're saying, but you have every right to feel that way because that's the feeling you're having. And if we're not dealing with reality and the real emotions because we don't think we're allowed to have them or they shouldn't be there, then we are going to stay stuck because we're dealing with what we think should be as opposed to just dealing with, I'm having this big emotion. I am sensitive. It's a beautiful quality about me. And to me, like the biggest diss someone could give me is like being apathetic. Like I want to care. That's what I want to do. I want to care. I want to be a caring person all the time. So I'm going to do everything I can to take care of myself. So when I'm in the world, I am available to do that. You're not too much. You're just enough. We need you as you are. Like if you're not you, like who else is going to be you? Who else is going to share like these gifts and speak for those who maybe can't speak for themselves or don't have a voice? When you really feel into it, like it is your superpower and it can actually fill you up when you really get inside of it.
It's so true. I mean, the best therapists are empaths. I always say the best entrepreneurs are empaths once we hone it. because you're able to deeply connect with your ideal client or with your current clients on a level that majority of the world can't. And it makes people feel seen and heard and understood. But we can't have that happen and you're the expense, right? And that's how I used to operate. I was the expense. I was like the sacrificial lamb. No, it doesn't have to be like that. But I really know how that feels, and it sucks. And it's not sustainable. At some point, you're going to break down physically and mentally. Maybe you're there right now and listening to this, and there's another way. I mean, where would someone start who is really just at their end? They're like, I can't continue doing for everyone else and operating this way, but I don't know how to like turn the dial, like you said, turn the frequency, turn the channel, because this is only channel I've ever known.
I say you need to start by getting clear about why you want to make a change. And like, if you have a why, that's going to pull you towards something. Right? What am I doing this for? Right? Because I'm exhausted. I want to feel, I actually enjoy my life. I want to enjoy the connections that I have. I want to do my hobbies, whatever it is. When we're sacrificing ourselves, we're not getting any of that good stuff. And so starting by getting clear, like, why am I going to stop sacrificing myself? Okay. I need to actually have an answer to that question. And like, why are you going to set a boundary? Not because, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. Like, you need to have an answer to the question. I'm setting a boundary because I'm not going to allow myself to be victimized by this person anymore. And when I'm with them, I feel like I'm a victim, or I feel like I'm put in this, they make me feel less than. And I've learned that lesson. I don't need that lesson anymore. So I can't give that way anymore. And so I have to know why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you don't know why, sit with it. Like, I'm going to set boundaries because I want this in my life. If I didn't give to everybody, what would I do with the rest of my time?
Oh, and you'll have a lot of free time, by the way, like to the point where like I started doing like crafting.
Yeah.
Like really, like I was like doing hand embroidery, like, cause I was like, what the hell? I mean, so much time on my hands.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we also have to give up of like, I'm not going to be the savior anymore. Right? I'm not. And that is an identity that we can hold really deep of. I come in and I save people, and it's like, I am not a savior. Like, I'm a guide to get people home to themselves. They are their savior.
Right. Like, I'm not God.
Right.
But I certainly played it, not intentionally. But like I played that, like I had some illusion that like I actually could change the outcome of this person's life just solely based on me. And it was my responsibility. Like now when I say that out loud, it's like, sounds insane and comical, but that's how I behaved.
Yeah, that's how it felt. Right. And saying again, like, you have every right to feel that way. I know you want to save them so bad, and you can't, because it's not your life, and you cannot walk someone else's life for them. And stop trying to learn their life lessons for them. They need to learn something from their lessons of how they move through the world. The universe is giving them that back to teach them and give what's available. So like an example, like if you are going to give somebody a ride to the airport and they're chronically late and you have a lot of anxiety about that, and you're like, oh, I'm going to have to drive them, whatever. I'm going to have to do something extra to make sure they get there. Maybe you're taking them to the bus stop or a transport. And now I'm going to have to make it so they do this. And it's like, no, you don't. Just take them there. If they're late, they're going to miss their flight. That happens sometimes.
I love this example. Also, no one asked me to take you to the airport in LA. It's not happening. I would gladly order you an Uber, but I'm not doing it, nor would I ask you to take me. Just for the record, how this can show up, you guys, in business. I wanted to give you an example because it kind of we can kind of see, right, like the clear lines in our personal life with family. But there's sneaky ways this untreated empath personality can be really weighing on you. It can be with undercharging for your services, feeling guilty, especially those of you who are in healing professions, medical professions, where it's like, well, if I charge too much, then I'm just in it for the money. I'm not really here to help people. And all sorts of stuff goes on. So then you undercharge or you overgive for your pricing, maybe in time, maybe in energy. Another way is you're doing things, whether it's in your business or it's working for someone else, like you're doing like repeated tasks and responsibilities that you absolutely hate, that like drain your life force. And of course, we all have like annoying things we have to do as adults, like taxes and things like that. But I'm talking where it's like repeated stuff that you're doing and then you're venting to people that you're having to do it. That's another sign of your empath stuff coming up in your career life.
I think work is one of the hardest places to manage your boundaries and one of the best places to practice, because it does touch a lot of those money things, and it can get a lot to the family of origin stuff because of the boss dynamic or work dynamics if you work for somebody. And so, but it's a great practice ground because it is so clear, because we literally have defined roles. And so if you can see them and start to put them into place, then you're going to be like, oh, this is where it ends. Like mine is over and this is what I do now. And I think for me with money and healing and all of that stuff, I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I have to do everything that makes me available to do that. And that means having a life where I'm not stressed out about money. And I get paid to do this, but if I didn't love it, there wouldn't be enough money in the world.
I like that shift. I know that you have a freebie. I'm not sure if it's ready yet for this episode. So you guys can make sure you go back and like check on her website, which is in the show notes. Her Instagram's in the show notes as well. But I know you're working on a free resource of giving examples of like literal words you can say and write to set boundaries with people. Because I know how hard that was for me. I was like, but like, how do I say it? And then I'd rehearse it in my head like 5,000 times on saying it. And then I'd have to call people and read it. Like, you've actually created a really cool resource for people. Is that ready yet?
Yep. I got up this morning. So it's guilt-free boundary setting. So it goes over some of the stuff I talked about today, but a lot more like in depth of what you can do and how you can really get prepared to start setting these boundaries and find those whys, find what's been holding you back, and really be honest with yourself. Like, you've been held back for a reason. And up until now, you didn't know what to do different. And now we're learning how to do different. So, taking this opportunity. So there's some exercises on there as well. And I'm going to continue to add resources like that so that people know how to do it, because you can.
And if you are looking to get direct guidance from Holly, you can also see that on her website. This is not an insurance situation. You're like paying her actual like money. You're paying her cash, as you should. So I don't want you thinking, oh, there's a copay and it's like a whole medical thing. That's not how her business is structured. So please be respectful of that if you are looking to work with her privately. And I would strongly encourage you to forward this episode to someone who comes to mind, because there's another empath in your life. It could be your auntie. It could be a friend from high school. There's someone I know that also comes to your mind. It's like, oh my God, it's my friend who's always complaining how tired she is, and she isn't sure how she can get her energy back, and she never has any time. This can be very validating. I know it was for me. I never had heard of the term empath until about like 7.5 years ago. And it was very validating to know there was like a term for people like us, like meaning I wasn't alone and just a total random weirdo. Like there is a lot of us out there. Like how common is this, Holly? Like is it like you see it all the time?
Yeah, I really do. I think I hear the same things, and like people are very much feeling the same things. And it is really common. And once you start to get inside of it, because I think people also connect on like kind of, I'm so tired, I'm so busy. And it's like, you don't have to connect with people that way. You can connect with like, I'm so empowered, I'm so free. And when you are starting to connect with those people, you're finding other empowered empaths are like, oh yeah. Like, and they have compassion for folks of like, yeah, you're just giving all of this away and you don't have to do that anymore. And I think like you and I both being empaths of saying like, you don't have to do this anymore. Like you don't, it can be different.
It is so freeing. And all that time and energy you're saying you don't have is going to magically appear. And it might sound hard to believe because now you have probably that critical parent in your brain going, but you don't understand, Tiffany. And like, you don't have kids and I have 3 children and I have this and that and da, 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 da. And you go down on a whole thing. Okay. Well, I would encourage you to experiment with this and see what happens, because I don't know one person who has done that work where they haven't had a laughable reaction of, oh my God, I can't believe how much time and energy I have. You realize how much you were being depleted and bleeding out.
Mm-hmm. You don't even know because it's your new normal. You've created a sense of balance with this fatigue. And so, I think I talk a little bit about that in the guide, but yeah, you've created balance with this. And so it is going to be uncomfortable because you're creating a new normal. And that's okay. You can do uncomfortable things. You're uncomfortable right now being so exhausted. So it's just a different uncomfortable. So I think being really honest of like, yeah, it's not easy at first and it takes practice. Like if you haven't been used to setting boundaries, start to practice.
I would say instead of like chasing a new diet, a new workout program, a supplement, an energy drink, coffee, I would say a much better thing to really focus on is this stuff, because this is what gives you like genuine, sustainable energy and freedom and serenity back, not all this other stuff.
I'm so glad you said that because I feel like I've at so many points in my life was like, this is the diet, this is the trip, this is the skincare product that's going to change it all. I'm going to be empowered. I'm going to feel really good. I'm not going to cry anymore because I like am overwhelmed with all these feelings. And it never happened until I really was like, I'm actually going to prioritize myself. And I'm going to look in the mirror and I'm going to see the child behind my eyes and I'm going to tell them that I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Not just say it.
And not once in a while, would you have a kid and just go, I'm going to take care of you like maybe once a week, maybe every other day? No, it is literally every day and with you all day, right? Like all day long, I'm going, what do you need? What do you need from me, sweetie? Like it's all the time.
I actually, in my course, Detach, that's not out yet, I have a part about writing a guide like you would write for a babysitter if you were going to go away on a business trip, and helping you really figure out what is that you have to do every day to take care of this little one. Because if you would give these directions to someone else, that can just be a really good activity to think about. If you were going to put someone else in charge of this kid, would you be okay with them talking like this to them, taking care of them like this? Like, probably not. So don't do that.
I love this. It'd be like, she needs an appropriate amount of carbs and a lot of quiet time and water, and reality TV will soothe her if nothing else works.
I love it. And then you can pull it out. If you're overwhelmed, okay, like what does she need?
Well, thank you so much. This was really a beautiful conversation. You guys go check out Holly. She's in the show notes. You can also hit her up on Instagram. What's your Instagram channel again?
Balanced Growth with Holly.
Balanced Growth with Holly, and share this episode. Take a screenshot, share it in your Instagram, Facebook stories, share it privately with a friend, with someone who you know will be like highly validated by this. Because it was something that truly, when I learned this and understood the root of it for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was some weird alien that was wired differently than everyone else. Like, I was like, oh, that's why I do the things I do and react the way I do. So that'd be a beautiful gift for you guys to give to other people. Thank you, Holly, for your time and your wisdom. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.